This episode of Paranormal Heart is brought to you by Nodakian Studios. If you're looking for a fine piece of stoneware pottery, check out Nodakian Studios at nodakianstudios.com, as well as on Facebook, where she periodically gives away pieces of pottery. Again, check out Nodakian Studios at nodakianstudios.com.
Welcome to Paranormal Heart, a place where people can talk about their paranormal experiences. With your host, Kat Ward, along with a special segment, Oddities with John Mallard.
Welcome back, folks, to Paranormal Heart. Bienvenue tout le monde et merci. You already know what I'm going to say, but if this is your first time tuning in, you can find us on the second and last Sunday of each month on Podbean and YouTube. You can also find us on sparkradionet.org, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Podchaser, and anywhere you find fine podcasts. If you enjoy the show, please show your support by telling others about us. Hit that like button, share, subscribe, and follow. Folks, I have to apologize. I kind of dropped the ball in the episode that was to be released on June 28th. No excuses, I just lost track of time and did not have an episode for you. And for that, I greatly apologize. But things are back on track and ready to go. So here in the Ottawa Valley, schools are done until September. Everyone has survived the new way of doing things. It'll be interesting to see what schools will look like come September. So far, they're telling us that students can either continue their education at home or physically attend class, with many restrictions, of course. For those returning to class, it will look a lot different than when they were last there. Let's hope it will be a smooth transition for everyone. Things are starting to open up here. I'm seeing a lot more traffic. It almost looks like things are getting back to normal. Until you take a closer look and you look at the lineups outside with people standing 6 feet apart, businesses are only allowing a certain amount of people in at a time, and there are arrows on the floors to show you which way to go while shopping. And that seems to be confusing for everyone, yours truly included. It seems to be such confusion whenever you look at everyone shopping and no one knows which aisle to go up or down. It's kind of funny. But it also amuses me too when you go around the corner when you're at the grocery store and you come face to face with other people. They all jump back, laugh, and say they're sorry. Yes, we really do apologize for everything here. It's a Canadian thing. By the way, if we don't say sorry at least once a week, we lose our Canadian citizenship. I'm just kidding. That doesn't happen. So there are more and more people wearing masks. Some places like Toronto are making it mandatory to wear masks while out in public. I'm sure it's just a matter of time till that will be the norm everywhere. But no matter what's going on where you are, I do hope you're all safe and doing well. This episode's shout-out goes to my listeners in Barbados. I appreciate you taking the time to tune in, and thank you so much for your support. In episode 38, my guest is no stranger to the Bigfoot community. His YouTube channel, Bigfoot Odyssey, is a must to check out. They aim to be the authoritative leader for Sasquatch information, media, and factual witness accounts from around the U.S. They strive to bring you credible eyewitness testimony, stories, and recreation. Their mission is simple: to expose, document, and educate the masses through the knowledge of credible eyewitnesses who have had sightings, encounters, or heard vocalizations of the elusive species we know as Sasquatch. He does not simply talk about Sasquatch on his channel. He's had an encounter himself that I am happy to say he shares with us. I introduce to you, host of Bigfoot Odyssey, Kerry Arnold. Hey Cam, hey Kerry, how are you guys doing? Welcome to Paranormal Heart.
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Doing
for being
great.
here.
Thanks, Kat.
Hey, thanks for co-hosting, Cam. I really appreciate it. And Kerry,
You're
as
welcome.
you know, I've been wanting to have you on the show for a while, and finally made it happen. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Happy Mother's Day, by the way.
Oh, thank you. And
I don't know if you have kids or not, but
yes,
hey,
I do.
It's Mother's Day. All right.
2 teenagers with attitudes.
Awesome.
But they're good kids, though. Yeah, so folks, as you already know, I pre-record my interviews. So today is Mother's Day, but by the time it gets released, Mother's Day would have been here and gone. So I just want to say I hope you all had a nice Mother's Day. So, Bigfoot.
Yep.
He seems... I was watching a show the other night, Survivor Man, Bigfoot, or Sasquatch. Oh, jeepers, I can't remember what. He has another show on it. Right now, I'm so fascinated with Bigfoot, and I was telling my husband, it really, really irritates me because I want to know what he is. And I've been having a lot of conversations with a lot of people lately. So, Kerry, if we'll start with you and tell us how you started your show, give us the name of your show, and any research that you might have done, theories.
Okay, yeah. Well, as far as what they are, I think we all want to know that. I hardly think it's going to be answered without a type specimen, unfortunately.
Exactly.
And even then, it's been suggested that there are many types of these creatures. I don't know how anybody would know that, but it has been suggested. So even if you do have a type specimen, you may just have a particular type. As far as we have 2 channels. We have Bigfoot Odyssey, which we started 2 years ago in March of 18. We do travel documentaries. That's what we started doing. We just travel the country and talk to people, usually researchers or people that have a lot of activity going on around, and we tell their whole story, showcase their best evidence, go to the places where they had encounters or happenings, and just try to show people who these people are, kind of maybe lend a little bit more validity to the happenings. I created another channel that Cam actually had been trying to get me to do for quite a while. It's narration. It's kind of the same thing he does, only not quite as good. It's called The Shudder. It's called the Shudder. SHUDDER. Like you shudder to think, like a rabbit run over your grave.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And it's just accounts, kind of like just like what Cam does. Like I said, just not quite as good, and the visuals are a little different. Try to do a little different, but finally did it after a while, and Cam helped us out there, gave us a big boost on that, and so that's our other channel. That's the things that we do. As far as getting into the subject, I had an encounter with one of these creatures 13 years ago, back when I deer hunted. As a matter of fact, it was the last time I ever hunted, period, was the day that I saw that. Well, I didn't just see it. He kind of encountered me, is the way I look at it. I was turkey hunting and doing something different that I hadn't done. Of course, I was having experiences with these creatures the whole time I was out there. I was just too stupid to realize what was going on. I was suspicious that somebody was out there either messing around or messing with me at times, but strange things had gone on out there for the whole 7 years that I leased the property. And I decided I was going to turkey hunt, and the first time I'd ever done it, I went and prepared a spot. I burned off a little area, and I think the turkeys had been in it because it was about a week before I made it back. I think the turkeys had already been in there scratching around. Got up there and got set up and started calling, and it took about 2 hours to get a response. And I was getting responses from young turkeys, jakes. You can tell the difference because Jake doesn't finish it. They just kind of halfway gobble. But I didn't hear any big gobblers. Well, by the time I get to where I can see them, there's the whole flock is there. There's at least 30 coming all through the woods up this big game trail. And I was getting excited about that. Well, all of a sudden they just all take off at one time. They weren't even anywhere close to me. And I didn't feel like they could see me, being hit. Of course, turkey hunting, you have to hide. I mean, don't even blink, because they're really, really good vision, have really good vision. They're not very smart, but they can see very well. So they all took off in one direction. And I was aggravated and upset. And just about the time I couldn't hear them anymore, I could hear what sounded like somebody walking through this bottom. I was kind of up on a hill, and there's like a 2-tier drop off that I couldn't see, all the way down to the bottom. And it was somebody walking down there through the thicket. So I stood up and looked, and then finally I could see this person. It was a black guy, which made perfect sense. The property I was on belonged to a black family. The whole neighborhood, their whole family lived up on the road. The old man I leased the property from, all his sons and daughters and nieces and nephews and grandkids, they all lived up there. So it's one of them, as far as I was concerned. This is probably about 150 feet away, not very far, but all I could see was just about from the shoulders up. And he was wasn't moving fast, kind of lumbering, like he was tired. And I was studying on him, and he would turn his head and look at me, and then look back where he was going. And he would turn his head and look at me and look back where he was going. So I waved my hand at him, like, yeah, I'm right here. Never once did it dawn on me how he knew where I was. That I was just upset because my turkey hunt was over now, and here's this amateur out here messing around in the woods on my lease, whether even if it's their property or not, it's not the point. It's how people get shot when you're not communicating with each other. Mm-hmm. So there's a big pine tree there, and I just plopped my back against the tree and was holding my gun in a non-aggressive, I'm not going to shoot at you position, kind of like you hold a boat paddle when you're paddling a boat, with my hand around the butt of the gun. And at some point he had to walk away from me, because the next time I really got a good look at him, he's coming up a hill, up a shallow grade towards me, and I can see most of his body, and it looks like he's wearing camouflage, and that upset me even more, because I thought, well, if this guy's wearing camouflage, then he's hunting. But the whole thing just screamed amateur to me. This guy's out there, he has no idea what he's doing, he's lost, he's tired, just by the way he was moving. There was nothing to clue me in that this could have been anything else, until he got to a point where I could see him pretty good. There was a little gap there, about 3 or 4 foot wide gap between 2 pine trees, 2 little small pine trees. And he reached his hand out to grab one of them, and I could see the skin on the inside of his arm. I could see the hair hanging down. I still didn't know what I was looking at, but that's one of the first things I noticed. That was, I think, the beginning of the transition from somebody to something. And he pulled himself up to that tree and just started letting me have it. Like, I think it was definitely a language, because it was like it had form. Like he was using form and syntax, and he was modulating words. They weren't anything I could understand, but the tone of it was so unnerving. It was like something you should hear in a Exorcist, the movie The Exorcist, or like Bat Mass, that type creepy. Of low, really deep, just a demonic sound. And I was completely freaked out at that point. I remember feeling this, I just called a true sinking feeling, just dread, like somebody just poured a bucket of cold water right over the top of my head, and I'm just going down like, oh, it's that. But even then, because I think there's such a level of disbelief in the moment that you don't want to believe it's that. So I'm trying to figure out how this is a person. So it was kind of like waffling back and forth between it being one of these creatures. The first thing I thought when I was, this is a Sasquatch. This has got to be a Sasquatch. It's got to be what everybody's been seeing in the woods and calling Bigfoot. But I think I was still trying to convince myself that it wasn't, and trying to figure out how this could be somebody, because it looked like a dude. Now, when he was straight faced, he really looked like a dude. But when he got angry towards me, his face completely changed, and his head was massive. His body was massive. I don't think he was tall. I don't think he was like 8 foot or anything. He was a little taller than me because he was standing down that grade a little bit, and we were just about even. We were about 80 feet away, as far as you'd play a game of catch with somebody. So we were pretty close. And then I could see what I thought was camouflaged on his body was mud, or it looked like mud anyway, because it was all over one side, his right side, all up to his neck, on his shoulder, around underneath, like he had been rolling around or laying in the mud. And it just has sticks and leaves and all in his hair. I could see his skin, his dark gray skin underneath. He was black. His hair was jet black. His face was black, like shiny black, like leather shoes black. I couldn't see like whites of eyes or anything. And I don't remember seeing his eyes. He had a very, very big mouth, very white teeth. At one point there, he stuck his tongue out, just peeled his lips back and stuck his tongue straight out. Wasn't not like sticking it out at me, just like he was tasting the air or something. And I could see he had a gap in his 2 front teeth, just like Michael Strahan gap. He had long canines, not super long, but longer than his other teeth on the bottom and the top. And eventually he just, the position I was in, I wanted to reach my hand down and just get my hand on the grip of the shotgun that I had. And that's when he really got upset. When he saw me move and do that, he got really upset, and he huffed at me. He just gave me like, no, don't do, you're not going to do that. Well, I felt it. It was like a pressure wave, like standing in front of a big speaker, and it startled me. And that's when I ran about 4 steps off that tree out into the clearing there. And he had started rocking back and forth like really fast, but he was still holding on to this pine tree. And I think that's the part that really scared me the most, was because I could hear that tree whipping. I mean, he could have pulled it up and thrown it at me, but I think it was that sense of power that I got from him. And I'm pretty sure it was a male. I didn't see any genitals or anything. There was sage grass kind of up to his waist a little bit, sagebrush. But standing in that gap, I could see pretty clearly everything. He stopped doing that once he, I guess, prepared himself to leave. It all happened pretty quick, probably about 30, 45 seconds the whole thing lasted. He had took his hand off that tree and turned his body to the right and just cocked his head to the side, kind of like a dog when you whistle at a dog funny, and they just kind of cocked their head to the side. And he was still looking at me, looking down his nose and across his left shoulder at me. And he took 3 or 4 big steps towards this game trail that was right there, and then turned away from me and walked down the hill through the thickest stuff there. And I could still hear him, but I couldn't see him anymore. And then I think once he got close to the bottom is when he yelled. And it didn't sound like the Finding Bigfoot yell that you normally hear. It sounded like a baboon, is the way what I would compare it to. Just kind of like a buildup, like wow, but very, very loud and extremely abrupt. And I think the only reason he did that is because I was still standing there. I was frozen in place. And then I think I stood there for a couple more minutes because I guess I just didn't want to turn my back on him, because I had to walk a half a mile out of there. And there was a lot of bad feelings in that whole experience. But I made it out of there. And as soon as I got home, that's what I started looking up, was Bigfoot, trying to find everything I could find out about it. And, back then, 2007, that, the podcast wasn't out yet. It wasn't until Wes Germer came with Sasquatch Chronicles that I really started getting comfortable enough to talk about what was going on. Because if you listen to that, a lot of the things that happened to people there are way worse than what happened to me. Actually makes what happened to me look anemic. But it really messed me up. It changed the way I thought about things. I didn't go back in the woods anymore. I never hunted again. I sold everything I had that had anything to do with hunting. But just kind of psychologically, I think I was I'm better now, but I was afraid to go outside at night. I would lay on my bed and watch my closet door until I fell asleep. Just, irrational things, a normal person wouldn't do. But I've had a lot of, I would say, anxiety issues. It's kind of like holding something in. You're holding in this truth, this thing to be true, and tends to find its way out, either in my dreams. Really, I would at least once a week, maybe twice a week, I would have this bad dream about. It wasn't ever my encounter or what happened. But it was always about a Bigfoot, and it was about to get me. And then I could just be driving down the road and look over into the woods. Didn't happen every time. I think it depended on where I was, and just get that washed over feeling, and then it would just come on me. It's something I couldn't control. It just happened. I wasn't really, don't think I was afraid. I don't think I would have been afraid to go back in the woods. But the few times I did try to go back, something physical was affecting me. So Linda, my wife, suggested that we do something with it. And we talked about doing interviews with people on video. And I said, well, if we're going to, go the trouble of driving, a long distance and do interviews with people, we're going to do more than just interview them. We're going to tell the whole story. That's why we called it Bigfoot Odyssey. It wasn't because we traveled. It's this person's journey through the Bigfoot experience, and we've had our own. I did my own on there, actually. And that it just kind of turned into evolved from there. And that's how we got into it. And it's relatively successful as far as a fringe topic or a Bigfoot channel. I think we get a pretty good bit of attention. I get a lot of calls and emails, and I get to talk to a lot of people. Met a lot of good people. Met Cam this way. I contacted him, but I wouldn't have done it otherwise.
It sure sounds.
I hope that's good enough.
Oh yeah, it's perfect. It sure sounds like what you encountered is a form of PTSD, and a lot of people who have these encounters that I've spoken to or that I've heard about, the majority of people have the same reaction after they have an encounter like that.
Well, I didn't like calling it PTSD. I always associated that with war, and I don't want to disrespect anybody because I haven't been through war. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I'm sure it's probably some of the same effect.
Yeah. Yeah, being in a military community here, I've met a lot of people who do have PTSD, or what they used to call shell shock, or whatever you want to label it.
Battle fatigue.
Yeah. But yeah, I've come to learn that it's not just war related; it's just some kind of a trauma, a mental trauma that you've had, and it sounds to me like that creature was just giving you warnings, thankfully, that he didn't charge you or anything, or throw big trees or rocks at you.
Well, I felt for a long time that the gun saved me. That he knew what the gun was, because even walking out of there, I think I was starting to put things together, that all these things that had been happening out there were these creatures. They had been there the whole time, because I would hear strange things. I think they tried to run me out of there before then. Like I said, I was just too dumb to realize what was happening. Mm-hmm. But it happened mostly when I would use a call. Now, I had a Primos can call. Cam knows what I'm talking about. You turn it over and it sounds like a doe bleat. Bah. It's just one of those cans, you just turn it over every time. Well, I would go to this one spot, and it had at least a dozen times. I know this happened. I would get up in that tree and I'd hit that can call, and almost immediately hear something just come crashing through the woods. And I'm thinking big buck, the whole time. Mm-hmm. You get buck fever. Everything is a huge buck, especially when it's like that. And it would come, cracking limbs, and bucks don't do that. They just don't. Even if they're mad, they're not going to do that. But I could hear this thing coming, and then it would get to the edge of a thicket and just stop. And that would be it. I would hear nothing else. And of course, in my mind then, before I knew really what was going on, it's a buck, and he just winded me. He's just beating me. This is the smartest buck I've run into. I mean, I can tell you times that I have belly crawled with my rifle in front of me on my elbows through the thickest stuff out there, trying to get into the position where I thought these things were bedded up, that I was going to catch them either coming into it or going out of it. That's how hard I hunted that place, trying to get this quote unquote buck. And, but it was things like that came back to me. I would be camping out there, and I heard an owl that I swear was somebody. And I was so convinced it was somebody that there was only one person that really knew where I was. And that was the guy that had hooked me up with his grandfather for the property. And I thought it was him, because it was literally like, who, you could hear the lungs, the breath in this hoot owl. And so I can remember, I don't remember exactly what I said to him, but I did say something to the effect of, I can hear you. I know that's you. You might as well come on out, But, he never came out. And I don't know what I thought about it. I remember hearing a fox yip that didn't sound quite right. It sounded like somebody, a person doing these things. So, and I would hear people talking. I would just hear like someone was walking down this logging road. And I mean, this is not a logging road that you can bring a vehicle down. It was bad. It was an old logging road. It had big ruts in it. You're not driving down it. It'd be hard to get a 4-wheeler down. But I'm thinking, okay, there's people walking down this logging road into here, and I can hear them talking. And I'd yell at them. I could remember yelling at them at least once. Hey, you're gonna get shot. To something to that effect. But it was these creatures. They were out there. There's at least a family of them out there. They were out there the whole time. I heard kids playing down in the creek one day. I was in my shooting house early, and it's a long food plot. It's probably a 70-yard food plot I had right there. Well, on past the food plot is a grade down to a creek bed, probably about 200 yards, and I could hear kids screaming at each other, like playing. And the house is probably 700 or 800 yards from that spot up to the house. Probably the house is 1,000 yards from where I was. Well, I can't shoot that way now, so I get out of my shooting house and I'm going to walk down there and tell them to get their butt back at the house. They don't need to be back here. It's deer season. And I get down there and there's nobody there. I don't even hear kids playing at the house anymore. And so I think that was them. Then there was just so many things out there that if I would have known, had been even remotely aware, that I would have recognized as being one of these creatures. And that's the main reason we do what we do, is to push awareness. So there's not going to be that person out there that's like me. You don't have to believe that Bigfoot exists. Just consider it a possibility when you hear that loud tree knock, or when you hear that scream in the distance, or you hear something that sounds like two legs walking through the woods. And in that way, if it comes out on you, maybe you won't be too traumatized or messed up from it. You can prepare yourself for it a little bit,
Yeah, and to know that you're not the only one who have these experiences too.
Right. Well, that was the main reason for me looking into the subject to begin with, was to get some validation, and I got very little. All there was a lot of blurry pictures and a few blogs with people's stories in them. No one was really, people were doing the same thing I was doing. They weren't telling anybody what happened to them. Who's going to believe you? You're crazy. You didn't see that. I hunted my entire life, Kat. I hunted for almost 30 years, and I never saw a footprint, anything that I thought would be out of place. I think I experienced them plenty, but when you're hunting and you hear something in the bushes, you can't see what it is. You may hear something that take off running and think, oh, well, there was a deer right there. He made me. And it could be one of these creatures. We just don't know, So it's easy for someone to say, I've hunted my whole life, there ain't nothing like that out there, because people don't understand the nature of this creature. And what I believe, what's obvious to me about this being, is that they are predisposed to hiding. It's not taught. They just do it. I believe they hide not just from us, they hide from everything. They're even hiding in the dark. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to be found out. As far as this is just what I believe. I don't know this, but it's what seems obvious to me. I think if it weren't that way, we'd have a lot better evidence of them than we do. So
agreed. Yeah.
If you think about this creature in that sense, then it's easy to understand how they've stayed away from us and stayed away from, people walking into the woods. They just go away and get away from you. They can see you coming a mile away. I mean, obviously they know you're coming. We are not well suited to the woods. We go in very clumsily.
Yep.
And as far as a hunter is concerned, we're creatures of habit. We tend to do, we have a pattern. We park our truck in the same place. We walk in the same way. We go to the same shooting house, the same tree stand. We hunt the same area. We do the same things. It's not hard to hide from us. I mean, I could hide from somebody if I wanted to, if I had the tools to do it. And these creatures seem to have all those plus.
We may think that we're trying to be stealthy in the woods, but you might as well be wearing a full suit of armor because they're going to hear you.
Sure. And it's rare. It's rare for a hunter to go off trail, and a lot of the hunters that do go off trail are the ones that run into these creatures in the woods. So,
Kat, if you don't mind me interjecting here, that's what we do. We get these stories like Kerry just told. I mean, hundreds of them. And I have to say, and I know Kerry, I've never actually met him face to face, but we talk all the time. And his story is one of the most vivid stories that I've ever heard out of hundreds that I've seen. And Kerry is a very, it appears to me that he's always self-assessing. He's always rethinking things, running things through his mind, especially on this encounter. You can tell by the way he just narrated it. Yep. He knows everything. He remembers everything from top to bottom. But it's very rare that I ever get one where there's an aggressive posture on the animal's behavior. So I've always thought that about Kerry, that he's a deep thinker. He thinks about these things, and he's always, and he, one thing he told me recently was he's getting back out in the woods. Isn't that right, Kerry?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Have you been out yet?
I am. I went out in the woods here by the house. I was actually cleaning the back of my truck out here in the yard one day, and I heard the loudest knock it sounded like a baseball bat on a tree, and it was probably 150 yards into those woods. And I didn't even look up because I didn't want to acknowledge it. And I just kind of finished what I was doing really quick, and I went inside. And I went out there. I've been filming things for the new channel just to have something visual to look at. Kind of like I'm kind of copy cam a little bit. I'm just trying to get something out there.
I'm thinking of doing that too.
The whole time I was out there, I was thinking, please God, don't let me find a tree structure. I don't want to don't let me see a footprint. I just want to get some images. I only probably went 100 yards in. And then came back out. And again, it's not like I'm afraid that something's going to come out and jump out and get me, but it's there. It's that, I know it's possible. I know that one of these things could be right there on the other side of the bushes looking at me, and the possibility for them to come out is it's there. So putting myself in that vulnerable position. Of course, I have my Glock 45 on my side. When I was in there, and I have my hatchet too, my little, I got a Talon, or I think it's called a Reaper. That's what it's called.
Oh, yep.
Hatchet. Yeah, I had that with me too. So I felt like I was at least had the illusion of safety at that point. But I didn't stay long. I did some filming and came back in. But Linda and I will go into the woods when we film with people for the show. But I'm out there with other people, and I have a particular focus. So it's a little bit different. I'll still get a little unnerved. And Linda, she'll just run off. She'll go off in the woods and do whatever. And I look around. She's 100 yards away. And, we heard some knocks one day, and she went towards them. And I'm just like, what are you doing? I want to see. Yeah, okay.
No, you don't.
Get back over here.
Now, Cam, I know you've never had an encounter yourself, and you're out in the woods
Right.
often with your dogs, but maybe it's kind of like Kerry. Have you ever heard anything in your travels in the woods that maybe you did hear them, but you didn't realize? You thought maybe it was something else?
No, nothing. Absolutely nothing. I've never seen, and I've been out with, look, I'm not a down and dirty researcher. I'm not one of these tough guys that gets out in the woods and tracks them. I know guys like that, but there's a 500-acre tract of woods behind me that I have permission to do pretty much anything I want to do on, unless it's hunting season. They hunt it. But I've been all back there, and all my life, I'm from the city, but spent a lot of time. We camped when I was a kid, and my father and my uncles and my grandfathers, they all hunted. And so I've always been exposed to the woods. I've never seen or heard one thing, nothing. And when I got interested in this, I started looking, especially on this land that I ride my bike and walk my dogs, and we go back there and fish. And, it's about if you take the longest route, it's probably about 1.5 miles walk, and it's beautiful and it's peaceful, and I rarely get to go by myself. But when I first got into this topic, Kerry is into this topic because he had an encounter. I'm interested in this topic because I love his story and his candid, genuine demeanor about him, and so many people like him. And the question that keeps running through my head through all of this is, what if it's true? I mean, Kerry knows it's true, and all the people that send me encounters know it's true, and I believe it's true, but I don't have perspective on it. I don't have scale on the subject, if that makes any sense. And so, but to answer your question, no, I've never seen. I've even been out again with researchers. They'll go out and start calling. Like, we were out at 1 a.m. riding roads, and they would stop, and there was 8 or 10 of us. We'd all pile out of the car, and they'd start doing these Bigfoot calls and things like that. And I never heard it. They were hearing it, but I never heard anything. And so, and I was the only one. I don't know if I'm hard of hearing or what, but and I have lost some hearing. I work in a real heavy, loud industry. I did for years in the shop, and I probably lost some hearing. But no, I don't. But I just have a huge affection for the people that come forward and tell these stories. I mean, Kerry's a real smart guy. He's not, he's successful in his businesses. Kerry is really good at pulling people together and putting teams together to get things accomplished. And I've always admired that about him. There's no reason for someone like Kerry Arnold to come forward with this fantastic story about encountering a Bigfoot on a turkey hunt, unless it's true. There's nothing but a downside to it, if that makes sense. And so it gives me this huge affection for these people, because there's been something has happened in their life, and they drop everything and lose all abandon for their reputation and their livelihood in some cases, to come forward and tell these stories. And I just think it's and some of the stories are fantastic. I mean, it's just, and I'm just eat up with it. I'm eat up with it. And the more I get, the more I enjoy doing this. And maybe someday I'll have an encounter. I don't know. We'll see. I have a lot of people say, well, come on over here. We got them right in the backyard. There's people out there who see them like I walk out my back door and see squirrels in the woods. It's a real common bit of wildlife you see, at least where I live. And they see them like you see squirrel, like I would see squirrels. And I've had people say that they see things in my videos and a Bigfoot did that, or you've got them there. And I'm like, no, I don't think I do. I really don't think I do. And so
we get that a lot too.
Yeah. So, all that to say, no, I've never had an encounter, and I would really like to have one. I really would. And, listening to Kerry talk about, it shut down a few things that he loved to do in his life. But you can almost equate it to something like, about 4 or 5 years ago, I saw some videos on kayak fishing, and I thought that looked like the coolest thing in the world. And so I spent about $2,500 on a kayak, and we've got a lot of small lakes around here that are perfect for that. And I took that kayak out one day, and I was way back in nowhere land, and there's a pond back there I had seen for years and years on satellite that I wanted to get back there and fish. And I got back in there, and I caught some good fish. I was all by myself, and there's a beaver hut at the end of the lake. It's a huge beaver hut. It's probably been there for years and years. And I paddled up to it, and I didn't, I got, your momentum takes you, it just keeps taking you forward. And I'm paddling the kayak with pedals. It's not I had a paddle, and I'm fishing the whole time. Well, the end of my kayak goes up and bumps into this beaver hut, and about 6 or 8 cottonmouths fall out of that beaver hut into the water, and they're swimming all around the kayak. And if you're in a kayak, you're real low to water. So I start, man. It's got a little prop underneath that these pedals work, and I had that thing going backwards, and I swear I was throwing a rooster tail out the front of the kayak trying to back out of there. And I got out of there, and I fished on my way back, picked up 2 or 3 more fish. But when I got to the bank, I pulled up to the bank, and there were 2 more cottonheads sitting there, or cottonmouths sitting there right at the bank. And they did not move, and I couldn't get out of my boat until they moved, and it took about 10 or 15 minutes. I was slapping water at them, trying to get them to move, just making them mad. But all that to say, I loaded that kayak up, came back that night, took a picture of it, put it on Craigslist, and it was gone the next week. So you have these events in your life that put you in a position to where you say, I'm just not going to do that anymore. Yeah. This event kind of turned me off on it. And I have fished some of the nastiest swampy oxbow lakes, sloughs, rivers you can think of. And I've encountered cottonmouths all my life. I know how they behave, and I know what they do. But for some reason that day, I thought, I'm not going to fight these snakes down this low to the water. Now I still fish, but I'm up in a boat. I'm about 2 or 3 feet above them. I'm not right there at water level with them. But the point is that something happens, and you just stop doing that, and that's what's happened to Kerry, I think. Now, his ordeal's a lot more traumatic than watching 4 or 5 cottonmouths drop out of a beaver hut, but it's pretty much the same principle. You just lose interest in it. And what's cool about it, he's a self-assessing, deep thinking kind of a guy. And from what I understand, he could tell you more about it, but he's getting back in the woods. He's not necessarily overcoming a fear. It's just that part of his life just kind of shut down that day. And now it's starting to kind of come back. And I just think that's pretty cool.
Well, I can tell you, it's all about perspective, because it's only a tragedy if you treat it like it's a tragedy. If it's only tragic that I didn't go back in the woods all that time, if I treated it that way, and I did, because I felt sorry for myself. Why was this happening to me? And it took me a long time to figure out, looking into this creature, that this wasn't just some lightning strike thing that happened. There was a reason it happened. And this is my theory. I believe this wholeheartedly. No one will ever be able to convince me otherwise, just because of what I've learned about the behavior of this creature. If anybody else would have done the same exact thing I did that day, I don't think anything would have happened. But I think they knew who I was. They had been watching me for 7 years. We had interacted, even though I didn't know it. I think they might have thought I knew they were there anyway. And then when I did something different, I crossed the line. I was hunting past deer season now. I'm hunting in a different area. I burned off part of their habitat. I'm hunting a different animal. Plus, I had so many coming toward me. I think that all those things together were a trigger. And because he knew who I was, he was coming to tell me that I was doing wrong. Because they had to know and anticipate that I was going to be coming back and doing these things again and again and again because of what I had done previously. I believe they have that type of ability to work things out and process and plan, so to speak, and have be self-aware, aware of themselves. And I believe that's why we don't run into their bodies in the woods, is because they are like that. They're so aware of themselves and so predisposed to hiding and not being found out. They're not going to leave one of their dead around for us to find. They're going to hide it and do something with it. That's just how I feel about it. But I do believe that this wasn't just an out of the blue thing that happened. It was something that worked up to that point, and they let me know it. So that's the only thing that makes me feel good about the whole thing anyway. Because this doesn't happen to a lot of people. I believe there has to be either a complete accident or a special circumstance for one to come to you. I believe they have to know you.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you said that how did you word it? When it yelled at you or roared or whatever, and you said you had all this fear. So many people talk about infrasound with these creatures. Do you think it was something like that, or was just plain fear because you heard them?
No, it was just powerful.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a big set of lungs. I call it a huff because it wasn't overly loud, but it was so powerful. I guess we were close enough that when he did it, and it was so abrupt and quick, and he lunged forward toward me when he did it, he was just like throwing this ball of sound at me, and it hit and I felt it. I think I felt it. This is just how I remember this. It's been 13 years and I've thought about it. There's hardly a day that's gone by that I haven't thought about the whole thing. I used to sit and close my eyes. I would look at my watch and I would close my eyes and I would go through the time it took from when I saw him the first time till he walked around, got to the tree, had our interactions with each other, and walked away. And it's right at 1 minute. So it's pretty fast, the whole thing. I don't think he was at that tree longer than 30 seconds, if that long, maybe 20 seconds that he was actually at that tree confronting me. So it all happened pretty quick. But I've thought about it so much and just wanting to get answers. And I'm pretty comfortable now believing that the reason it happened was because they knew who I was, and I was behaving differently. And they were just letting me know it. I don't know if they intended on running me out for good, even though that was the outcome. I think if I would have gone back, that it would have just gone back to normal the way it was, because I've been back out there. It took me 10 years, but I went back to film, and I had to go twice, because the first time I went with 6 people. And I tried to tell the story and everything that happened while I was there, but I was so full. I was full of oxygen, as I could put it, because Linda was with me, and I was breathing so heavy, and she was holding my hand and calming me down, and I thought I would be fine until I got out there to the spot. And the second time we went back, and I had my gun with me, and I had Scott, and we filmed, I was able to tell the story, but I still left some things out. Because I was watching, when I watched the thing back, and I kept looking back behind me the whole time. I was like, what am I looking for? What am I doing? This looks ridiculous. So I had to edit the crap out of it. And then I had to sit down in the house and tell parts of the story that I missed. So it kind of overlaps if you watch the whole thing. The story overlaps from the house inside interview until, being in the field and showing, what happened. But I do believe that that's the only reason that any of it happened, is because they knew who I was. They've been watching me for 7 years, and I was a fixture out there.
And you changed your routine, and they're like, what are you doing? Yeah.
Right. And I thought, maybe because I had so many turkeys coming in to me, there were no big gobblers. You know, if you're a turkey hunter, the gobblers are going to come in first. Well, there weren't any. So the rest of them just came in the way I looked at it. And I wondered why there were no big gobblers. Maybe they eat those. You know, maybe if you know, from what we know about this creature and their abilities, you know, a turkey on the roost would be pretty easy pickings, I think, you know, and you silhouette one, see a big one up there and just reach up there and grab it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's just a theory. There's a reason that they weren't out there. But could he have thought I was going to take all of them, you know, or more than one, or if I was going to, you know, mess with their food source any more than I already was? I had murdered a lot of deer out there. I hate to say the word murder like that, but I took a lot of deer out of there and they never did anything, you know, but I also let a lot of deer walk, you know, I culled the herd. So why they did it with the turkeys, I don't know. I think it was, they had enough. There was a line of tolerance there, and I think I crossed it with them.
Now, you said that it wasn't as tall as what a lot of people say their encounters are. So, because some people say they could be like 10 feet tall. Do you think that was perhaps a younger one, or do you think it's just a different species from what other people are explaining?
No, I think he was a young guy, but I still think he was full grown. You know, he was probably close to 7 foot. He might have been between 6'9" and 7 foot tall. It was hard to tell, but had really long arms. His forearms were bigger than his bicep. It was very out of proportion, the whole thing. And his hair was black. But you know, he was not groomed by any stretch. He was very matted up and like he'd been rolling around in the mud and on the ground for a long time. Really short hair on his head, like a gorilla. You know, had the apex. His head looked like a football, and it was huge. But his face looked like a person. It looked like a dude. I mean, exaggerated features, of course. But, and then when he got upset, you know, the face changed. I can see that face now. And when I close my eyes and think about it, he's not 80 feet away. He's right there. And I see that face, and I can talk myself into, or think myself into getting that feeling. And, because I've done it several times.
I love this story so much. I've heard a lot of them, not as many as you and Cam, but yeah, and I still believe that you were very lucky. That I still firmly believe he was warning you, like you said too.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he could have gone south so fast. Yeah,
I thought he wanted to kill me. There was moments in there I thought that these were going to be my last moments. I was at least going to be fighting him all the way out. That here's this thing, but it was almost instantly walking out, because I didn't run. I was walking really fast, and I had a Benelli 3.5 inch 12 gauge automatic. I loved that. It was all black, all synthetic, but I had the plug in it. It's only had 3 shots, but I had a pocket full, and I have high brass number 4 turkey shot. That's not anything to sneeze at. I think I could have killed him if he'd have got close enough. I was just afraid that was going to be the case, that he was going to come at me and I was going to have to shoot him. And that was some thought in there of how I was going to shoot him. Where was I going to shoot him? In the face, in the head? I mean, it's an automatic. I can get 3 shots off pretty quick and then reload while I'm running. But I would walk. I don't remember a lot of the walk out, but I remember walking 50 or 60 feet and stop and wait and listen to see if anything was following me, because, you know, a big cat will follow you through the woods. And if you stop, you can hear them take a few extra steps if you stop real quick. So I know I did that on the way out. And there was this one area that I always got creeped out in. Not always, but if I ever got creeped out, it was in this one area. And something was telling me the whole time that they're going to be right here waiting for you, or he's going to be right here waiting for you. And I think even before then, I thought there was more than one, that there were several of them. But when I got to the point where the road turns and goes up a hill, and there's my 4-wheeler sitting there, 200 feet away, and I start up this hill, and I can see my 4-wheeler, and you're talking about, you know, a view of heaven from a seat in hell.
Yeah.
And I stopped, and I turned around, and as soon as I turned around, I heard very distinctive tree break. It was about 60 or 70 yards behind me, off in the thickest stuff out there. And it was just that crackle pop, that cow, you know, that loud rifle shot. That's when I ran. I ran, I got on my four-wheeler, and I think that was the scariest point right there. The most terrifying part of the whole thing was getting on my four-wheeler because I couldn't pull forward the way I was parked. I had to back up toward this thing, and the whole time I'm running, in my mind, he's coming behind me. So now I get on my four-wheeler, now I got to back up toward this thing just to get out of there. So I think that was, I made it all this way, and now he's got me.
Yeah.
Because I think it might have crossed my mind already that people see these things all the time. They just don't live to tell about it, and or the ones that do live to tell about it, see them from a distance in their car or whatever. I mean, Bigfoot was not even remotely on my radar. I don't even remember if I thought I believed they existed. Maybe if they did, they were somewhere else. I might have thought it was possible, but I had seen Patterson Gimlin. I had seen In Search Of. It just none of it ever interested me. And but it wasn't until I had this experience that I even was remotely interested in the subject. And I think that's the case with a lot of people. I think it's rare to find someone, especially like Cam, that you have people that are in it for interest, yes, but to do something noteworthy in the subject, I think is a rarity. And I think that's what Cam. Of course, you have to have a person that's creative, like Cam is, that's probably read his entire life, and I think that seems to be the case too. People that grow up reading a lot. My mother made me read. Thank God she did. And then you end up having that creative sense about you, that you can visualize what you want done and then see how to do it and then take action to do it. I think there's few people out there that can do that have the interest to do it in this subject.
Exactly, like you said, especially when they haven't had any encounters themselves.
Right.
But Cam, maybe you have, you have encountered them and you just didn't realize. Do you have any in your area, or any sightings in your area at all?
Yeah, I live right on the border of the Holly Springs National Forest, and that whole area, National Forest area, is supposed to be a Bigfoot hotspot. There's been several stories come out of there, and I've done a couple on my channel, not as many as I thought I would do, because when people figured out where I lived that those stories would come flooding in, but I've only done a couple. And I don't think I could have been close to one. Heck, there could have been one standing right behind me at some point in my life. But I just, I could say, I guess I could make up some stuff and say, I've seen tree breaks, all these things that people see, but I've seen a couple of tree twists behind me here that I wonder how the tree didn't grow that way. Some of them do, but this particular one didn't. So, that might be a possibility, but I mean, we're talking to a guy here who's actually been face to face with one, and I'm talking about a tree twist. It's just kind of boring, but I would love to see a track. That's what I would love to see. And if I ever saw a track back here, nobody's going to be walking back there, especially in the wintertime, barefooted. And so, if I see something like that, I'll be real excited. I'll be taking pictures and all those things. But no, I just don't have, I guess I just don't have the mojo.
Yeah, some, like you said, seem to have them as soon as they step foot out of their house, and others, like you and I might have had an encounter one time during a paranormal investigation out in the wild, but I've never actually seen it. So, but yeah, Kerry, if you,
I don't think.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say I don't think they're very prone to making themselves known just on a whim. I think if you may catch one holler or scream in the distance, but even then, you're not sure it's one of these creatures, and who knows what else is out there that we don't know about that's hiding from us, So I think most people that go looking for this creature tend to find what they're looking for, whether it's actual Bigfoot evidence or not. They're going to call it that because that's what they're looking for.
Because they want to believe and they want to find it so badly that they're seeing it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can walk up on a hog, not see it, or if you see it, something black running through the bushes, and it's going to be barreling off away from you. If you're looking for Bigfoot, that's probably going to be a Bigfoot to you. That's kind of the way I see it. It's hard to be objective. It's hard for anybody to be objective. We're all so we have our own biases and everything. So it's not a dig on anybody that does that. It's just understandable that a lot of the things and evidence that people find, it's because that's what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. It's like that investigating the paranormal too. Some people want to find ghosts so badly that every bump in the night is a ghost, and in fact it's not.
Right.
But same thing. But do you find what do you think would have happened if you would have shot the creature and you would have killed it? What do you think you would have done with it? Or have you ever thought of that?
I don't think we'd be talking right now. I don't think I would have survived the rest of them.
Yeah.
Just from what I found out. See, at the time, I didn't know anything. And if I would have had my rifle, my 7 mag, I'd have shot him right between the eyes, without a doubt. But I have my shotgun. I wasn't sure that what I had was going to kill him from that distance. Excuse me. He was going to have to get closer. So, but I didn't know anything at all about him. Knowing what I know now and what I believe happens whenever people shoot at them, I think they retaliate immediately.
Yep.
I think it's a bad thing. So I think if I would have shot one, now if I were to run into a body in the woods, I would go live on YouTube right then, and start filming. At least somebody would get to see it. If there isn't an agency or whatever out there actively keeping this thing hidden, which seems to be the case, they exist. Why we don't have a body or evidence of them, there's a reason for that. So is it just pure dumb luck on their part that it hasn't happened, or is there someone taking care of these things when they happen? You hear stories of people having these bodies, and then these black vehicles show up and take it away from you, and then threaten you and your family and all these. I've heard several stories like this. But that's what I would do. Go live on YouTube right then, just so someone would see what I was seeing. I would mess with its face and lips and show that it was a real creature, But depending on how big it was, I would try to get it out of there. Absolutely.
Well, I'm glad it was a peaceful encounter, not like some of the stories that we've heard where they were not so friendly. But wow, yeah.
Yeah, he was mad. He was mad. Yeah. No doubt he was mad. Or he was letting me know I was doing something wrong. I believe that wholeheartedly. But yeah, they let me out of there. They let me leave. I don't think these creatures are grounded in morality one way or the other. I think it's all about survival. I don't think they're just going to kill you on a whim because they're evil. And on the other hand, I don't think they're necessarily good in any sense. I think everything is about surviving. And if killing you has nothing to do with that, they're just not going to do it. I think they'll warn you. I think they do. Like tree knocks. I heard knocking out there continuously. And I don't think that was for me. I think that was them communicating with each other. But what I didn't put together about the whole thing is the way the knocks would happen. They would be 5 loud knocks 200 yards away that I'm thinking is somebody at their house hammering on something, and then it would quit. And then 10, 15 minutes later, here's 2 more. Way back behind me, back there, but I heard it at 2:00 in the morning out there, the knocks. But, and I rationalized this way when that happened, because it was 2 knocks from 2 different places. One way off, 400 or 500 yards away was just, but they were loud. And there was 5 or 6 of them just pow, 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 rhythmic, and then 30 seconds later, way off behind me, another few hundred yards away, a little closer though, I heard it again. And this was late one night. And in my mind, I'm thinking the bucks are out. They're hitting on bamboo, because there was bamboo patches out there. That's what went through my head at the time. And I even told people after that, yeah, bucks, they'll come out early in the morning and hit on bamboo. Because I've heard it.
Yeah.
So it's your experiences and how you rationalize things away. Why would anybody think anything else? That's just like when I saw the thing. It looked like a black dude to me. Made perfect sense. If I'd have been anywhere else, I would probably been clued into what it was a lot sooner. But because of where I was, the property I was on, as soon as I saw him, I was convinced that it was a black man. Yeah. So how many times have these creatures been seen in the woods or at a distance and been mistaken for somebody? I don't think they're all 8 feet tall and 1,000 pounds. I think there's plenty of them out there that are maybe just a little bit bigger, more robust than a regular person, but not that big,
I'm really happy that even if you shot a warning shot, that probably would have set things off too.
Yeah, well, I was worried about actually pointing my gun at him because I didn't point my gun. I was ready, but I didn't want to point my gun at him because I knew instantly. He knew there was something not right about that gun. As soon as I moved my hand, he got upset about it. And well, they had been watching me out there shoot deer for 7 years. So obviously they knew that long black stick thing that I had was loud and killed. So I think they were able to put that much of it together. But I had a different gun then too. I didn't have my rifle with me. So maybe they didn't even notice that. I think they do watch us that closely. I think they know our notions and our tendencies and they can fool us so easily. Magicians do it to us all the time.
Yep. That they do. Well, do you have any final thoughts, Cam, or questions for Kerry?
No, I've heard Kerry's story 2 or 3 times, and matter of fact, I'm working on a written form of it right now and writing his story. It's quite extensive, and we should have that out pretty soon on his channel. But no, I don't have any questions. I'm just glad to be on the same connection with him. He's a great guy.
You both are.
Well, thank you.
And I'm really thankful that you both have shows that let people know that if they've had encounters like this, that they're not alone. And I think that helps an awful lot of people mentally to know that it's okay that you've seen something that you can't rationalize, but you're not the only one. So kudos to you guys.
Well, thanks. It's been great being here. Certainly do appreciate you having me on.
Well, I appreciate you being here. As usual, in the show notes when this gets released, I will add links to where they can find you. But did you want to mention, Kerry, where they can find you again?
Or you can visit our website, it's bigfootodyssey.us. You can find us on Facebook, Bigfoot Odyssey, on YouTube, Bigfoot Odyssey, and The Shudder, SHUDDER, The Shudder.
Perfect.
If you want the stories.
Yep. And Cam's been on before, but Dixie Cryptid, check him out on YouTube. So thank you so much, guys. I really, really appreciate this.
Thank you, Kat.
You're welcome. Loved it.
As did I. You guys take care. Well, we've made it to the end of another episode. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, take care of each other. And if you'd like to be on the show or have questions and comments, just drop me an email, paranormalheart13@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you.
Paranormal Heart would like to extend a special thank you to PurplePlanet.com for supplying the music for the show. The views and opinions expressed on Paranormal Heart are those of the host and participants.